But what I thought I'd do is, I'll explain what happened with that. David went on a cruise before Oshkosh. I think probably his arm was twisted to do that. I think his only requirement was he was back in time for Oshkosh. Unfortunately, when he got back to the U.S., he didn't feel good, and he came down with COVID. So yeah, that's still a thing. So he's laid up in bed right now, and I think Karen's laying beside him, both sick. So think about them if you don't mind. I'm going to go ahead and give a quick, I see some fresh faces. We're going to have a Q&A session later on if anybody has any questions about the design or anything of that nature. If you want to jump in right now on any new faces, just basic questions about the Thorp T-18, I was going to jump into a quick status update on the status of Thorp Central. And then I was going to try to do an interactive session with all of you. We've got a lot of owners, non-builders, a lot of builders, owners still, and I've had a lot of people walk up to me this week, not a lot, but at least two, that have walked up and said, hey, I've heard you're constantly speaking all the praises of the Thorp T-18, can you give me a negative? And I'd like that little interactive kind of session with everybody, all the owners who are, have noticed things about the aircraft they might not be too happy with, that could be improved, non-structurally. And just kind of a little feedback back and forth between all of us on, yeah, we love the airplane, but what is dated from 1963 that might make it a little more, for example, comfortable in the year 2024. It's a dated design. We have to admit that. So what could we possibly do that hasn't been done already to make the airplane better? So with that being said, I'll jump right into talking about Thorp Central. There's not much to report. All I can say is I can't really give a definitive answer other than there are some changes coming when it comes to Thorp Central. So with that being said, I want to jump into another thought I had. This again, if you're new and you would like to jump in to start talking about Thorp T-18 questions up front, we can do that now. If not, I've got a few thoughts on some of the heartaches and things that might drain down somebody who takes on the responsibility of trying to run the part supply for our design. And namely, that's whoever currently operates with Jim Grind, currently is the owner of Thorp Central, was responsible for supporting us. But the name of this group that we all right now, 90% of us I believe, is called the Thorp T-18 Mutual Aid Society. And I had a thought when I was trying to come up with something to talk about besides David's airplane today. I kind of had a light bulb go off, and you guys give me your thoughts on this. Early in my software career, I was responsible for writing a system for a local energy company. And one of their problems was they would have surplus assets left on a site that were no longer useful on that site that they needed to make use of in perhaps another site. So it was what I wrote was a tool allowing a guy out in one basin to request a pump from another basin that wasn't being used. And I know that a lot of us builders, myself included, I know I can name a half a dozen other who have stockpiles of T-18 parts. I thought about offering to write up a similar exchange as an add-in to one of our websites that someone could post, hey, I have 3 roll bars I'm never going to use. If anybody needs a roll bar, I have 3 roll bars. Someone else says, I've got a set of standard ribs I'm never going to use. So we eventually create a catalog of parts so that whoever takes on that job of Thorp Central, be it Jim Gron or perhaps somebody who acquires it from him, they're not tied up in the day-to-day of trying to find part A or part B in their stockpile of parts that are meant to supply kits for an entire airplane. So any thoughts on that? Does anybody have any feedback? Does that sound like a good idea? Is it something you find useful? Brian, Bruce agrees. Anybody else have any feedback on that? Bernie, yeah, anybody? Who's that? Oh, awesome, okay. Well, I will get to work on that. And again, it's not, I think it's mainly, my intention on this is just to have a catalog of surplus parts and then contact information. I don't think we need to be worried about dollar figures. That's between the person who needs the part, the person who has the part. I know, I don't think anybody's in it to make money, but personally, I'd be in it just to empty stuff out of my garage. I know there's a lot of this. I can say, Bob over there is kind of taking a little nap. I know he's got plenty of parts laying around he's not used, and I've seen his hangar. So let's give it a shot. I think it might, part of the burden of that, taking on that role for Thorp Central is, it's one thing, whoever's running has to be able to maintain their own life. And if they're constantly fulfilling orders for onesie-twosies here and not keeping their focus on the big picture, then it's kind of starts getting to be less of fun and more of a daily grind. Anyhow, so yeah, Virginia.
So how is it different than like a classified? Is it just you can post whatever you have, but it's from a list of parts?
The question is, how is it different from a classifieds? I think the difference is it would be Thorp specific. So I could put a list of part numbers in the exchange, and that way if somebody's looking for a specific part number, they can search through it and say, okay, Mujahideen's got part number 632, Lee's got one too, who's closer, Hayes in my hometown. I'm not expecting it to take off immediately, but I know that there's a lot of people out there that call me all the time and say, I've got a landing gear. And the problem with landing gear is it's not cost effective to ship it, but if somebody's landing gear is 30 miles away, it gets a landing gear out of the garage. So, yeah. Any other questions? Okay, so that leads me to my next kind of hopeful, if we can kind of interact on this, owners, non-builders, what is your biggest complaint about the design as it stands? I'll go through here. So, what do you have to say? Yes? No backseat. Okay. I'll make notes of this as it goes. So, that is sort of an option. Like my first ride in the T-18 was in the backseat of John Shin's airplane with my brother and myself in his backseat, and my father and John Shin at the front. So that was 4 souls in one T-18 powered by an O290. So you can do it. It's just not, you remember you get your limitations. You might be a small kid or something like that. But, it is possible.
My main gripe is roll signal.
I think you said the roll's too stiff?
Yeah, roll signal.
Okay.
That's 130. Yeah.
Take a look at your
So I heard the same from a man who was flying 50 Lima Echo, which is Larry Evermester's airplane. He told me that the stick forces on that airplane were high above 120 knots. And I agree with you, Gary. I told him that's very odd. I would say above around 170 knots they get tight, but not at 120. So. You say one wing rolls like crazy? Unload the wing and rolls like crazy.
say unload the wing and rolls like crazy?
Yeah, so like 0G.
Yeah, 0G.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so maybe, I'm not specifically talking about roll. I think he was just talking about just maneuvering. I don't think he was talking about actually aerobatics. But, now, Bernie has a solution. I think you ran into this when you first bought your airplane, right?
Friction in your, that's all you think is due to friction or airlift?
Some of the guys didn't roll and trailing edge.
So,
I've flown those guys with the plane. Maybe I think the folding trailing edge they want.
So yeah, I was very good point, and Bernie was bringing up the rolled trailing edges. So I have that on my airplane. I found that helps out a lot. I remember Gary's airplane he has right now. He had the machine excursions that brought it back to a razor's edge, and he found that to be a problem as well. Very tight. If you go out and look at it, and I only have this reference because it's 30 years ago I was actually flying them, but if you go and look at a Learjet, the trailing edge of a Learjet is about a 1/4 inch thick, and it's squared off. I mean, it's squared off. It breaks the air up at the end of it. So at the very least, if you have extruded trailing edges, shave them off, get a blunt edge on it. If you feel like making some ailerons. It's not a huge lift to make the rolled trailing edges, which helps out a lot. Okay. Any other? Yeah.
I don't know if the new hits out, but the old style Johnson bar for passengers, that's not that's like most hits because it's way towards the passenger side. Start getting a full size passenger, getting full stick deflection. So,
I think the suggestion was our sticks keep getting shorter, and therefore we're not getting as much leverage.
The Johnson bar for flaps.
Dig it in your hips, Johnson bar and flap, and then roll trim mechanism gets in the way of on that center console. Has nothing to do with rolling. You're talking just about seat jump.
Yeah, you're talking about improvements. I'm just talking about maybe moving the flap handle out of the passengers kind of area.
Yeah, and that's yeah, absolutely. The electric flaps are kind of a necessity at this point. The trim wheel right there biting against your leg. I mean, I don't see how. I mean, I've hopped from T-18 since with the flap lever, and I wonder how I ever did it. I think we used to put a pillow on top of it when I was a kid, just keep it from cutting in my dad's leg. But yeah, moving the rudder pedals outside eliminates the forward tunnel. It also lets you reduce the size of that tunnel in between the seats with with removal of installation of electric flaps and removal of the flap lever. You can bring that down and in considerably. If you look at David Reed's airplane out here, his tunnel sits low right above the tube and it's about 3 inches wide. So good point.
Does Cubes have those parts to convert your Johnson bar flap make up to a electric trim? Jerry Cotner drew up very nice plans, and they were in the newsletters years and years ago. But it's a very simple adjustment, and you use the same cables. You just don't have that Johnson bar. So
the question was, does Cubes offer a kit for the electric flaps? And my first thought would be no, but you're right, Gary. It's I can give the part number of the linear actuator that's required. I can provide drawings of what's required to make the linear actuator hook up to the existing flaps, and then the mounts are again very simple. It's a weekend project at best, if not an afternoon project. It's pretty quick and easy. If you want to do it down and dirty, you could. You need a positive wire at ground and a switch that's got reverse polarity and some pop rivets, some 1-inch angle cut to size. I mean, it could be done pretty quickly if you want to get rid of that. Any other comments for potential improvements? Really? Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, it's too narrow. I know that. The guy came up to me the other day and said, "What's wrong with the T-18?" I said, "It's too small."
take a look at Elliot Seguin's airplane out there, some of the open, and the way that he has opened up the baggage compartment area. It used to have jump seat back there.
Mm-hmm.
And also its seats. He's got some seats out of Cessna flight deck.
Yeah, they're 162 seats.
They are a neat setup, and the back is self-supporting, so it's not leaning against the bulkhead. It goes after the bulkhead.
Yeah.
And Elliot's 6'2". He's fitting in there very well.
No, that was, I think, wasn't Lou Sunderland a pretty tall guy?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so that was, we'll have to get, see, I know there were people out there they were interviewing him and taking pictures of his airplane, so I suspect we're going to see something in the near future on his airplane, whether it be an AbWeb or somewhere, so hopefully we'll look out for that. I was hoping he might be here, but he's got test piloting to do. Okay, anybody else? Come on, there's got to be something else. Hey, Wendell. Wake up, Bob. Bob, come on, you've been around this for as long since I've been in diapers. What would you do to design to make it better?
now, my legs are getting cold. One thing I learned early on is no electricity down center tunnel. That tunnel, that whole tunnel thing is broken up.
So if anybody caught that, it was kind of similar to the conversation we had over here. I got it. So kind of similar conversation we had about the original tunnel design is kind of similar to what we were talking about earlier about moving the rotor pedals out. But even without moving the rotor pedals out, two things. One, you can roll the edges on that center tunnel. If you have a squared off tunnel and you're not comfortable, you can replace that center tunnel with something a little more with space in mind. You know, the tube itself is what, 2.5 inches, I believe. Yes, 2 inches. The tunnel itself is 4 inches, so you can make room for yourself by rolling that tunnel around the push-pull tube. The rotor pedals don't come into effect until several inches below that, so you could shape the tunnel in such a way that you make space for yourself there. Also, a warning not to run any electricity through or near the rudder cables, as it could arc and fry your rudder cables and put you in a bad situation. So if anyone has like any wiring running through that center tunnel, I believe you can move it.
The other thing I like different on, I built 2 T-18. I like the 2-inch longer gear. And I like the tapered rod tail spring with an ACS tail to it better than the leaf spring tail to it. That increases the deck angle so I can three-point the airplane. I don't have to wheel it. The short gear and the leaf spring tail wheel, if you try to three-point it, your tail will arrive on first. Then you're going to slam your main down, you're going to fall off the other way.
Yeah, and I think at this point, anybody who is still running the leaf spring gear is probably, I don't know if they're doing it out of protest or not. I know that Jerry Hoover was here earlier this week, and I wanted to talk to him about it. The big thing for me is I don't really notice it as much as, I don't really notice the leaf spring versus the rod spring as ground handling goes. But if you do look at it, it extends it extends that space between your main gear and your tail wheel like almost, a good 8 inches, which is significant. So it's if you're, for anything, even if you do have the short gear and you put the rod spring in there, it's worthwhile. I don't say I'm shocked anybody's still using it. The first time I saw a T-18 with the rod spring, I'm like, what is that guy doing? And then I realized that was kind of the norm. So anyhow, yeah. Good.
So this may be a minority thing, but I would love to be able to spin the aircraft. So whether for spin endorsements or for IAC competitions.
So you have an S-18. The only person in the audience that I know that's okay. It's a shame that Elliot is not here, because I think he actually did spin that airplane when he put it in the tail slide. I think it's on YouTube. So he has first-hand knowledge as well. So.
I've spun mine accidentally.
You have? And what was your experience? So the conversation is spinning an S-18.
Yeah, so if you're talking about improvements, it'd be nice to go through the spin program and get it, certified or at least checked off for spins. But that seems dangerous.
Being a custom built aircraft, I don't think that we can certify them.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You ask, can you spin an S-18? Everyone says, I don't know. So that's my thing. I'd love to have an airplane that I could do IAC basic.
Gotcha.
Right, for it.
So you're asking, we need a test pilot throughout and spin an S-18 in multiple directions and multiple CG. Right, which you would think would be forward of center. at best.
So while we're at it, is there a canopy setup that allows a quick release bailout?
The question is there a canopy setup that allows for quick release setup? I think there have been some people that have set up a cable system that pulls pins where you could jettison the canopy. Yeah, this is okay. I'm going to go off on a tangent since you reminded me of this. I wish I could bring the pictures up. Maybe I'll try. After Oshkosh last year, Jamie was all excited about. She wanted a tricycle gear T-18, and I kind of said no, it's not going to happen. Coincidentally, a week later, a retractable gear T-18 came up on the market, and it was up in Arkansas. And I'm like, Jamie, this is your airplane. I know this airplane flew in the 70s. It actually did fly, so let's go look at it. It's in somebody's garage. We flew up there and looked at it, and wow. One of the features it had was a jettisonable canopy, amongst other things. It had a electro-hydraulic landing gear in it. God, I wish I could show you guys some pictures. It was amazing. Like the pilot's feet that had to accommodate the nose gear coming up in between the feet. So getting rid of the tunnel is one thing. This guy increased the size of the tunnel two times. So picture a wheel up there. So your 2 feet are about half an inch from each other. So you're like almost like you're in a cassette or something. You're just right up against each other. Then there were inverters and Navy gyroscopes in the back and retractable steps because it was up on 3, so you couldn't hop up. It had a retractable step on it. And after looking at it, it was a standard wing, but the outer wing panels were as long as the S-18. This was made in the 60s, late 70s, and I asked the guy, I said, how many hours on it? And he said, oh, it never flew. And I was like, okay, I didn't realize this wasn't the airplane I thought it was. And the more I looked at it, I asked the guy, I said, Dan, have any idea how much it weighs? He said, it sounds around 1,600 pounds. So I looked at Jamie, and then I started looking at the engine, and had a 6-cylinder Franklin on it. He said, well, it's nothing that can't handle. And then I was like, So we started walking away, and I really hope if anybody knows this guy, I don't want to offend anybody, but I'm going to. He dropped us back off at our hotel, and Jamie and I walked to go get dinner. And we were walking through this parking lot in Arkansas, and Jamie's like, what do you think? And I said, at this point, I don't think I would accept it if he gave it to me, but I think if he paid me to take it, I might think about it. And Jamie said, well, can't you just turn it into a T-18 again? I'm like, no, it's not, it's gone. It's too far gone. But it was an ambitious project. And like I said, the pictures are amazing. This guy went all out, and it turns out that the guy who built it was I think he was a mechanic on T-28s to the Navy, and I think he had acquired a lot of surplus parts, and he incorporated them into this airplane. So the gyroscopes, it had inverters in it. I don't know what the inverters, I think the inverters were powering the electric gyros, and it had big Navy-style gyros in the panel, and very elaborate. It was really incredible. But anyhow, that airplane had a canopy eject on it. So in this case, I think it was really a valid reason.
Are you saying sell my airplane and buy that one?
Hey.
Yeah, go look at it.
Honestly, it had me until the Franklin, and I was like, I think I can make this work. But it was really impressive, I got to tell you. Yeah, if you guys want to see it, I've got pictures later on. I'm not going to put them up on the screen, but I've got them on my phone. You'll agree with me. It was quite the same. Okay, yes, people have done jettison canopies. Yeah, Phil.
Yeah, so the question is, what can be improved?
Yes.
Yeah, so 29-gallon tank. I got 180 horse. I fly 2 hours, stop for fuel, 2 hours, stop for fuel. The guys in the RV-12s beat the heck out of me because they can go 5 hours without having to stop. I want more fuel.
Okay, so the question is, how do I get more fuel? So there's, as we all know, there's wet wings. David Reed has retrofitted his airplane with a larger 40-gallon tank, which I think is probably the way to go if you're willing to pull out your instrument panel, which is not a huge feat. I think David, one of the reasons I wanted David to get up here and talk is I was sure that would be the first thing he would talk about and everybody would jump on it. And I don't think it's a huge lift to retrofit an existing T-18 with a bigger tank. It involves beefing up the bulkhead right in front of right below the windscreen and altering the cradles other than that, Derek, you aware of any other structural changes he made?
It's got to take away leg load.
What's that? Yeah, that's a good point. The point is you can't have any deep avionics, but most of our airplanes, the avionics are on the angled piece down below. So I know on my airplane, my current airplane, I probably couldn't get away with it because the angle of my lower piece is not aggressive enough, so it does come close to the tank. But so the other option is there's people that put in baggage tanks. It's not highly recommended because it's, again, you're adding FCG and reducing your baggage capacity. But,
yeah, if I was building one, I'd do the larger tank.
so I guess that's the point. Is I think it's a retrofittable item. I think it would be a worthy effort if somebody such as, like, say, Gary Green wanted to put a bigger tank in his T-18 and would get to fly one and see how much work he had to put into it to retrofit his tank. He's gone. He said, so that sounds like that's something he'd be willing to do. Oh, I think he's bringing up did Lou Jenkins build a larger tank too?
It showed him welding one on it most recently, and he said Cube was going to sell it.
Okay, so it sounds like Cubes might be selling the larger tanks soon. I don't know. I guess they kind of took, maybe without the consent of David. I don't know. All right. I don't think it was copyrighted anyhow. Anything else? Nothing. Bob's taking it up there.
Heard from this gentleman here. So his is 118 Lima Whiskey. The one he sold me is 118 Bravo Charlie because it was built in Cardozo. And then someone bought it in between because they wanted Bill's hangar. I think after Bill died. So he wanted the hangar, but he had to have an airplane. So he bought the airplane so he could get the hangar. Then I don't think he flew it. Then it went to Phil Albee, who did some stuff to it, including making the mahogany panel, which is gorgeous. And then some things happened, and it went to Lee. Lee did some rebuilding, and I strangled him until he was willing to sell it to me without flying it as much as he would have liked. So Lee, I'm sorry I took her out of your hands, but you know how much I love her. And so anyway, so that was 5 years ago next month. And the next month will be 5 years. But I come from the space of being a buy 'em and fly 'em. I know nothing. I know what a rivet is. I can't build anything. Like, I can open the cowl and give it to my mechanic and say, please check this. So you guys that have built airplanes, I genuflect all day. You're amazing. All right, that said, since I had the airplane, I had communication issues really since I got it. I got out of Ellington okay, and I got through whatever that is to the southwest. And then I kept losing approach and center on the way back to Oregon. They just got farther and farther away, and I'd lose them, and then I'd have to look up a frequency and say, hey, I was talking to them, can you tell them I'm okay, and I'm with you now. So I just had comm problems forever. So I just attributed it to the old King. I had an old King radio and an old King transponder. So transponder was working. It's got a Echo UAT for the universal transistor, for the ADSB. So that's all working with the iPad. But the comm was an issue. So I just figured it's this ancient radio, a King K. Anybody remember what it was? KX 125, something like that. Yeah. So I took it to my radio shop near where I live, and I said, please put it in a nice, pretty new Garmin. So now it's got a 255 Navcom. Same issue. Didn't change a thing. I'm like, okay, this is impossible. Okay, took it to another radio shop because they were just less busy, and I said, help. So they said, well, let's just recable it. Let's put in a new antenna. Antennas can go bad. It's rare, but didn't help at all. I'm like, this is very frustrating. Bad enough so that when I was going home from Oshkosh last year, and I'm over the plains, where you're over nothing forever, and I was talking to Salt Lake Center, finally lose them
45 minutes later, I get a text message that says, "This is the supervisor at Salt Lake Center. If you get this message, please call anybody on 121.5 and let us know you're okay." So this has to be fixed. This is just terrible. And I don't know why, because no one else before me had problems, or maybe just didn't notice it. I don't know. But anyway, we tried everything. So it got the new radio, it got recabled, it got a new antenna, it got another new antenna. I had my radio shop pull the antenna, scrape away the paint, put a gasket on so it's got ground to ground, like instead of through the studs. It's like it can't be better grounded. Still didn't help. I finally thought, okay, I'm a retired electrical engineer. I know about wavelengths and radio frequencies and stuff. The way it was, which is the way it is on all your airplanes, shouldn't work because you're so close to that tail, they should interfere with each other. It blows me away that mine's the only one that has this problem. And so just on a whim, I thought, I'm gonna just turn this stupid antenna around, get it away from the tail, and it is almost perfect. I lost one approach controller on the way here, otherwise I had everybody the entire time. It's been wonderful. I don't know why that worked.
Do you have an Avatar?
I should say I don't know why everyone else's work. I know why this works. I don't know why everyone else's works. I'm sorry.
I see a nav antenna on your tail.
Nav antenna up there? How would that interfere?
I'm not sure, but
Okay.
that's one of the reasons between why yours didn't work, but nobody else with that antenna on the same location and that problem.
Okay.
So wavelength that other nav antenna might work.
All right, interesting. He's saying because it's got the nav whiskers right up there, maybe there's some interference going on there. RF is really tricky, but yeah, Bruce.
Were you losing them with their antenna behind you?
It was, so I go up and test it, just like listening to an ATIS 80 miles away or something and make a slow turn. There were definitely sectors where it would disappear and then come back. It wasn't necessarily behind me, it was kind of behind it on the left. But sometimes it was behind. I mean, it was.
Your tail is blocking out your antenna.
Well, why doesn't it block yours?
I have the same problem with my number 2 comm, which is top antenna. My number 1 comm is on the bottom of the airplane.
Okay.
No problem.
All right. We added one on the bottom of the airplane. Same problem. So I assumed that would make it go away too. That's just wacko. I don't get it. Yes, sir.
Hey Bill, my antenna's in the same place.
You got to shout for me. I'm very hard of hearing.
Yeah, my antenna's in the same place on my airplane, and I've had the same problem going away from the station. And I solved it by putting a second radio with the antenna on the bottom, underneath the fuselage, and
Antenna on the bottom should solve it. My radio guy put it in with an AB switch, and it was barely any different. And sometimes the bottom one's better a little bit, sometimes it's worse. All I can say is this fixed it. It looks funny, I don't give a darn. It works. So if you see you'll know which airplane's mine because it's got the backwards antenna. Pardon me? Any other?
You have a Mooney antenna.
It's a Mooney. So anyway, I just wanted to report that. Yes, sir. Oh yeah, great question. No one ever complained about not hearing me. It transmitted perfectly, even when they were like, nobody ever said say again.
I had the exact opposite problem.
Wow.
I can hear everybody, but nobody can hear me.
Yeah.
So I ended up changing out radios and then solved it.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So just wanted to report that RF is mysterious, and this worked. Okay. All right. Next up, I had cooling issues, cylinders. I don't know. Can you read this? Kinda. So first of all, I assumed initially that the cylinders were mapped so that like 333 would be front left, 344 would be front right, and so on. And it never occurred to me just to ask Lee because he probably knows. But I didn't find out until I lost one of my EGT readings, and I said, well, let's just replace all 4 because if one's dead, the next one's ready to go. And it turned out the left-right is backwards. So this 333 is cylinder number 1, which is right front.
yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4.
It could be, some people hook them up so it's physical, and some people hook them up so it's 1, 2, 3, 4. but it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So the left, right, or backwards. So that's part of the problem. When you don't know what it is, you don't know what you're chasing. So I had that. So it looks to me like the near left cylinder, which would be number 4, because I just thought they were mapped physically, would be much, much hotter than all the others. So this is mild. Until we fixed it, like I'll show you. If I was climbing on a day like this, it would be up to 420 in no time, and I'd have to throttle way back and climb out at 300 feet per minute just to keep it from getting up to 450.
What decade are you climbing out at?
So, I mean, I usually climb out at 120 knots. I'd have to throttle back and make it 130. So it just turns out that my oil cooler is on that side, and that's got the oil cooler hole on the top, right, just above cylinder number 4. I'm backwards for you, I'm sorry. But and so I thought, okay, well, an oil cooler, hose is stealing air from that cylinder. So let's try something. So I tried some things that didn't work. But then when we replaced the EGT probes, the probe that was completely snapped, completely gone, told me, wait a minute, these are left, right, backwards. So the first thing is make sure you know what you have. And if you're not sure, I had one guy out there with a heat gun say, go blast this cylinder. Oh, that number goes up and the EGT goes up, and blast this cylinder. So I found out that it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So left, right, reversed. So should be obvious, but it wasn't to me, so not a builder. So anyway, so this was mild. I had cases where the 3 good cylinders essentially were like you see it, and that one, which was number 3, would be up at 400. So now I'm lucky. Mark, did you make it? So you guys know the name Mark Cook? Editor of Kit Planes magazine. Don't know how many airplanes he's built. The guy's brilliant. Used to write for AOPA. He's one hangar row away from me at Twin Oaks, where I live. And he has helped me enormously on this thing. He replaced that whole tail bracket for me when my tail bracket failed. He's been a gem. So he looks at this and says, told me where to look. So here's where I looked. This is the back of that cylinder, the hot cylinder, and those are dead bugs, right? Wedged in there between the fins and the what do you call it, baffling. Like, okay, well these gotta go, because you're trying to get airflow down there. So I blew those out, and he said, so that's the intake side of the cylinder. So those are very, very thin fins. And he suggested just getting some airflow by those fins. He gave me some silicone, maybe 1/8 of an inch thick little strips. So I loosened the baffling a little bit, kind of stuck them in there in a couple places, and just created a little 1/8 inch air gap after blowing the junk away. And that dropped it by 20 degrees. That equalized it a lot. So, but it still wasn't great. So he noticed. I wish I'd taken the picture on both sides. So this is my right front. This is number 1. Is that right?
Yep.
Number 1. So this is the exhaust side. And then he noticed that over on the other side, on number 2, the way the baffling hits the cylinder, there's a little lip that kind of blocks some of the air. And right here, the air goes in and it can go straight down and not accomplish much. So he said, well, let's make this side like that side, because that side's good. So he gave me some aluminum tape and said, just start covering up that gap. And so I did, and it helped another 10 or 15 degrees, and finally ended up going all the way across, and this is the best it's ever been. And so my numbers, and then the other side had it. No, that's just another view, I'm sorry. Okay. All right, anyway, here's where it is now. So basically at 20 to 40 degrees it varies, which is a whole lot better than 80 or 90 degrees from coldest to hottest. So I don't know if this is standard stuff for tweaking baffles or not, but this worked. I might tweak it a little bit more to try to get it down to, you know, a 10-degree total, but he says on his, he has a glass star, and his are within 5 degrees all the time. So I tried to get him to come today and just say hello and stuff, but he's busy with all his media stuff. In case it matters, these are the EGTs, so they don't usually matter very much. Yeah, you know, they're all good, strong EGTs leaned out. So anyway, any questions or thoughts about that?
I mean, you've got high cylinder head tanks and low EGT. So.
Come on the mic, because they need to, yeah.
Just observation, you've got high cylinder head tension and low EGT on that cylinder. That implies it's really basically it's a carbureted engine. You're not going to have a balanced fuel as you normally would with a, say a fuel injected motor. So that's kind of part of the course. You might be fighting an uphill battle. And yeah, Gary brought up it's in the T-18 newsletters years ago. Yeah, that space at the aft side on that cylinder, it's extremely important. So when he first flew his second airplane, he was running into the same problem. He had to actually modify his baffles to gain. I think he put about a 1/4 inch back there.
You look at that, the way that the fins are machined off on your right rear cylinder. They're flat. There's really no fin there. Right. And a lot of people make a baffle that lays flat against that. Yeah. You need to have a little channel or a duct with, a 1/2-3 inch gap that channels that air into those fins at the bottom of the cylinder. Oh, got it. And if you buy advanced baffle kits, it doesn't have that. But if you take a look at a Mooney baffle set, which is what I copied my initial baffle on, but it does have that little channel there for it will get that airflow into those fins at the bottom of the cylinder.
Okay, that's good. My mechanic is a movie specialist. There's always 5 movies hanging around, so I'll go inspect. But I'm going to try and open up that gap some more. Thank you.
I've also seen you can just use some washers to space it back. It's not quite as eloquent as making a separate baffle, a box that goes back.
Yeah.
And put a silicone in and lock the air. You have too much on either side.
Bob had a comment. Yeah, Bob.
My son bought an A5 Grumman, and so we're in the Grumman business. Grumman, single engine. Every single Grumman, whether it's a Tiger or a Kia or whatever, has a very high cylinder temperature on number 4. Every Grumman has no space behind the number 4 cylinder. I want to take his airplane when he's not looking and put a 1/4 inch space in there and see if I can solve it. But it did on my Thorp, but conversely, every Grumman that has one set up probably like yours has a high, I'm talking 420, 430 on climb out every single day. So, and that's, you shouldn't see that.
Yeah. So this is number 3 cylinder, but I hear you.
Yeah, he was just pointing out that the point that Bob was making, that there are even production aircraft, namely Grummans, that built their baffles incorrectly, too tight in this case on number 4, and it's just a known issue that they're going to have high temperatures on the number 4 cylinder than number 3, as Phil's case. Clearly, I see you've got some more slides here, Jeff. Some more things to cover. Oh, okay, all right, super.
Eject. I got one suggestion for you. I did notice you're running a Grand Rapids engine monitor, and I found that their displays, if you're using that display, is terrible. I added in an eye level, which gives you a full AHRS, EFIS, it ties into pitot-static. But the biggest thing is one wire from the Grand Rapids to the eye level with the display